Okay, welcome to the second session of the first day of our forum. You're in the BMP case studies session. This particular session is going to be focused on Houserville stream restoration project. So before we dive into that, I'd like to start out by thanking our speakers. So our forum has been developed to focus on the permittee experience as they work to meet the conditions of the Pennsylvania MS4 permit. So all of our presenters have volunteered to share this information to serve as a learning opportunity for their fellow permittees and local decision makers. So we thank them for their time. I think you've probably heard the disclaimer, I know at least once already, but you'll hear it again a few times throughout our next couple of days, and that's that these presentations and information offered as part of the MS4 Forum are the views and experiences of the organizations presenting. The EPA and Pennsylvania DEP do not endorse any one approach or funding strategy. The views and opinions expressed by the speakers and the speakers' organizations are their own and do not reflect those of EPA or Pennsylvania DEP. Mention of any commercial enterprise product or publication does not indicate an EPA or Pennsylvania DEP endorsement. So we got that out of the way. I'd like to remind again just a few housekeeping things. If you're not a speaker or in asking a question, I ask that you stay on mute. So I'm getting some background noise right now. So keep that going throughout the presentation. If you do have a question, put that in the chat, and we'll find us a spot along the way that we can address that question. Otherwise, we'll have time at the end for any additional
it'll get directed to the temporary number,
questions.
and then that number will like kind of bounce back. Oh my goodness! And then eventually we will be getting rid of. But
so with that, like I said, if any questions, please put them in the chat. We should have a few minutes at the end for questions, where at that point we could come off mute and begin and ask the questions. But we do ask if there are a lot of people asking questions, that you raise your hand, and I'll make sure that you're called on and your questions are addressed. So I think that's it. Rachel, did I forget anything? I think that's all my announcements and talking points. So again, we have Adam Smith from the Fish and Wildlife Service. Is that right, Adam?
That's correct.
And Bob Bierch?
Yes.
All right, from the Spring Creek Trout Unlimited. So they're going to talk to you a little bit about the Houserville Stream Restoration Project. So I think we have a video first, right, Rachel?
We'll just go back to the share tray.
Whenever, yep.
Okay, I think we'll go back.
Okay.
We'll
Do
go
we
back to
got
the share
here?
tray. Yep, I think so.
This, no. Are you getting it?
Not yet.
No. Okay.
The share tray, and then let's see what the right there. Click on that, and then we'll go to Chrome tab, and then there we go. Share, and let's go up to. There should be one there for present.
Oh, yeah.
Right. No, that might be.
There we go. All right, we see it.
Great.
Okay. Are we all,
Good.
all set?
We're
Okay.
on.
Thanks a lot.
Jason,
Appreciate
yeah,
it
yeah.
very much. My name is Bob Ferrick, and I've kind of done most of the project work for the Spring Creek chapter of Trout Unlimited for the past 12 years or so in that vicinity. And we thought we'd start with a little bit of the history of the projects, and then go into the Houserville project and talk about the funding before and after. We have Jerry Northridge from College Township and Harris Township, who's going to talk a bit about the MS4 credits, and finally the lessons learned from all of this process. Since 1990, we went back to evaluate all of the projects that have been done on Spring Creek. And one of the keys to this from a grant point of view and a historical point of view, we use Field Docs, which is a CAST-based modeling system, to evaluate the impact in terms of the downstream effects of all of the work that we did. And since that time, we did 31 projects. Now, we call them kind of sub-projects, but and during that time period, we planted about 7,000 trees covering 22 acres. And the sediment that we calculated impacted downstream 800 tons, 14,000 pounds of nitrogen, and 3,500 pounds of phosphorus. And from a funding point of view, this is something that we use a lot in terms of convincing people that we're viable in terms of getting grant money. And we've also gone to Washington, D.C. several times to talk to politicians about funding our funders. Major projects in the last 10 years. We did there's been 4 different grant cycles, and they mostly consist of bank stabilization and plantings. And this is a set of them that we worked on. This particular one that you're looking at behind the words was in Milesburg, which is downstream at the mouth of Spring Creek, and that's a 250-foot mud sill with some of the growth. Funding is probably the most critical thing. That project that we talked about was a National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant for about $70,000. And one of the keys to it is we were going to do 4 projects and we ended up doing 8 projects. We started thinking about 6 partners and we ended up with 23. And as you can see, the match is about 150, 160. It's a significant part of this. And one of the things that our experience is that getting partners involved is the first key to success in this. The next grant is one that we'll talk about in greater detail. It was a National Fish and Wildlife grant we got in 2017. It was for about $160,000, and we ended up at about $300,000 total cost with 40 partners. And when it comes to MS4, in 2015-16, a consultant from MT, what was it?
Yeah, I think
I wrote it down, I can't remember. Anyway, she came and started talking about credits. And
this is all new to us. You know, we had no clue about any of this stuff.
Yeah, so they visited us, and the Houserville project that we're going to talk about was identified by them, her, as a possibility. And as you'll hear from Jerry, eventually it will be that they get some credits for it. But one of the points that it's a lesson learned from my experience is that this is a long term. We didn't get the first time. We didn't get the grant the first time around, and we got it the second time. All of these grants we never get on the first shot at them. So no project that we've done has ever taken, in terms of the horizon, less than 3 to 5 years to get underway, and sometimes it's longer than that. The next one down, we actually were refused a NIFWIF grant, and it's on a stream nearby. It's a brook trout stream, and NIFWIF rejected it because it doesn't have enough sediment. It's too small a stream.
And it didn't have brook trout according to the model.
And
so
the model said it did, but people are catching brook trout in there all the time. So we had gotten a $35,000 commitment from a local foundation. And when NIFWIF rejected us, we gave the local people's foundation asked us, well, can give us some alternatives. So we gave them 3 alternatives, one of which was an additional 15, and then there was an additional 20. And they opted for filling in the $100,000 that we'd asked from NIFWIF. So then the other part of that was an Embrace a Stream grant. And the most recent one is a Growing Greener grant for about $40,000. And both of those projects are projects that are still coming up. The project that we're talking about was funded by National Fish and Wildlife. There were 3 projects that were involved, one of which is the one we'll go into quite a bit more detail. Some 1,200 native trees, and you can see the various resulting savings downstream. The first project, which was done in 2018, was a 5 rock deflectors along Spring Creek and in Benner Township, which and what we were attempting to do was restore and remove legacy sediment from the stream. And the natural channel was not possible because it's bounded by a steep hill and a country road, which also creates problems in doing the work. And we use stone log deflectors. On the left, you see what it looked like before.
That's about a five-foot vertical bank, I guess. And maybe you can't appreciate it there without scale, but definitely a lot of vertical banks on this section.
This is at the beginning of like almost a gorge. It's a canyon, and it gets very steep on both sides through about a 4 or 5 mile section. And on this side you're looking from, there's a road there, and it's only about 10 feet, maybe 15 feet to the stream. So the erosion was happening basically on both sides of the stream. And as you can see, we had to work a lot in the stream, and we put in the various structures. The second part of the project was Kissinger Meadow. This meadow it was donated by a local landowner, and is also a site where the University Area Joint Authority processes reuse water and pipes it from the plant all about 6 miles probably up, and it's distributed into the area that you're looking at. And there's quite a bit of debate over and number of lawsuits. I'm sure Jerry will have some comments about it, because just about everybody has, and we were to some extent restricted from what we could do. But most of it was putting in a pollinator plot and riparian buffer. This stream is the source for the State College water. In the upper area, you see the pollinator plot, and in the lower left corner there you see the silt sock going in. Maybe you could talk about that.
Yeah, the silt sock was actually a donation. The guy that we know, Joe Greco, approached the Spring Creek chapter and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and said, "Hey, I got this silt sock constructed using hulls from switchgrass, and I'm willing to donate it for this project." And we're like, "Well, okay." And so we started to use it, and we're like, "Boy, oh boy, this is a product that, you know, I know we're not really in the business of endorsing projects, but it really worked very well." We were right here in the lower left-hand picture there. We're laying it out, very light, very easy to work with. And then we actually made another tier of the silt sock going up the slope. This is a fairly steep slope. And in that silt sock, they incorporated the hulls from switchgrass, but they also actually filled it with a pollinator mix. So that was kind of neat. When the silt sock breaks down, it's actually has pollinator seeds within it. So it's actually kind of a multifunctional, whatever you want to call it, multifunctional silt sock.
Yeah.
All donated by Joe Greco and Joe's company. So yeah, we were happy to use it, and then we surely will use it again, especially when we get on, you know, something that's a fairly steep slope like we have here.
The third project, which is in the video that you saw, that was specifically in this area right here, where there was a kiddie pool, and we'll talk a little bit about that. This is the second most significant project completed on Spring Creek that I know of. The largest being the taking out of the dam downstream toward Milesburg. This section is wide, meandering area constrained by a road and 2 bridges, many landowners, including College Township. And this is the area where the MS4 credits came from. There's a significant buildup of sediment and erosion that required reconnection with the floodplain. And you can see the structures that were put in and the resulting downstream. And with that, I'm going to have Adam talk a little bit about the project. This is the site map, which is about 1.25 miles long, and it indicates the amount of work. And he's going to talk specifically about, if you look at the left, you'll see some pictures of the mud sill, then where the island is. He'll talk a little bit about that, and then down on the right-hand side below the bridge is where the kiddie pool is and the rain garden. And with that, Adam.
Sure. Yeah. So what we're looking at in these photos was the upstream landowner, and just a little background about how Bob and I got into this. I live pretty close to this site, so every day I would see how Spring Creek is, how we had 4 and 5 foot vertical banks, and talking with Bob, and it's like, Bob, we can do a lot better. We had collaborated on another project with Spring Creek Trout Unlimited probably 2 years prior to that. And it was more of an annoyance to me, and knowing how good this stream could be, how much sediment was there. And so finally we got our heads together and we said, Bob, it would be a nice stretch to work on. We think we have probably 4 landowners to deal with. When we started putting things together, we found out we actually had nine different landowners. So a lot of that's, we ended up doing a lot of legwork, and this is somewhere where the chapter came in and did a lot of that for us, coordinating a lot of the stuff with the different landowners. This is the upstream section of our project, and the landowner, again, they really like Spring Creek. They knew it could be a lot better. They had vertical banks. They also had a lot of junk, Tartarian honeysuckle, privet, it just full. Also some poison hemlock. So a lot of these landowners didn't know how much better it could be. They didn't know even who to talk to. So as it turned out, and we had the project map laid out, we got more interest from upstream. We actually extended the project upstream probably about 400 feet after we got our heads together. But anyway, on this vertical bank here, if you're going from left to right, you'll see the house, and then you'll see this is we have a mud sill framed out, or some people call it log cribbing. In Pennsylvania, we call it a mud sill. So we've got sill logs into the bank with our face logs on front. Our big thing, it mimics an undercut bank, and it also gives us a place to stabilize the bank and a place to grade to. And you'll see on the lower left, we'll see the after. This is after we've placed rocks behind the logs, put the topsoil back, seeded and mulched, and then you'll see the after in front of the house there as well. So what we have is we mimicked an undercut bank. We've stabilized the bank. So, all that overhead cover for fish and all the reduction in sediment here. The other thing is the landowner, it's tough to see, but there's a shed down there. The landowner asked us if we could maybe throw in a set of steps. And so we had wall rock to build our veins. We're like, Yeah, sure, we can do that. And so we did. You know, we thought this was okay. Nice thing to do for this landowner. So we did. Um, let's see this next slide here. This is the downstream, and you'll see we had a 4-foot bank. You see the left bank as we're looking up. It would be on the right hand side of the picture. A 4-foot bank, and you'll see a big oak tree there. Well, by the time we showed up, you know, Bob mentioned this being a long process. From when we first looked at it until we showed up, which was probably 3 years later, the tree had been in the water. The landowners had been cutting it up for the past year. Most of the tree was gone. It took another big chunk of bank there. But you can see we went from a 4-foot bank. Again, built a mud sill here, stabilized that bank. Lots of overhead cover there for trout as well. Just a little bit more about that, about the last structure. That very same landowner saw the steps we did for the neighbor and said, hey, can you build a set of steps for us as well? So we did. It just it kind of snowballed. Everybody liked the steps. The kiddie pool. Let me tell you about politics, especially about local community politics. Okay, so I'm talking to my kids, talking to the neighborhood kids, and they said, are you going to take out the swimming hole? I said, we sure are. I said, but we're going to put it back. So there's no way we could have even thought about doing anything here if the kids weren't reassured that the swimming hole would be there. So you can see how many rocks the kids had piled up here. And I'm saying it's kids. I think they probably had some grown-ups helping. Anyway, the bottom line was it increased that water level so much it would warm up in the summer. The other thing that happened is it trapped a lot of sediment behind it, and it widened the stream to the point where every storm it was cutting around the kiddie pool dam and creating a lot of scour. So our goal here was to correct the bank full width, number one, and number two, lower that water level so we actually could have something that's usable. Now, the kids were afraid as well about losing the depth of the swimming hole. So the fact that it was full of sediment, we said, that's fine. So instead of worrying about maintaining that same height, so the swimming pool, the kiddie pool, was of the correct depth for the kids and the grown-ups, we were able to actually excavate some of the sediment and then incorporate that behind our structures to build the bank that had been wiped out over the years because of the way the kiddie pool was constructed. If we could give the kids a diagram about how to build cross veins, you know, I think we'd be a lot further ahead. Yeah, here's another little feature. The two pipes you see actually drain the neighborhood that is nearby. There was no inundation here. In other words, that just pretty much tore through the buffer and went well, not completely straight into Spring Creek, but
damn close.
Yeah, damn close is right. And so we thought, hey, can we construct this so we have a little bit more inundation and maybe maintain a little bit of a pool here, you know, especially in the springtime, a vernal pool. So we were able to do that, and we actually took one pool and then connected it to another pool just below it. So you know, we've reduced a lot of erosion coming from the neighborhood here by this little rain garden.
So the next set of slides is what College Township and Jerry Northridge did and has done over the past, well, now, you know, he's a great partner of ours over the last 4 or 5 years to get the work on getting the MS4 credits. Jerry, are you there?
I am here. Good morning, gentlemen.
Hey, one comment, Jerry, before we get going. You know, Bob and I, we were determined to do this project. We had no clue about MS4, nothing. we knew what we were doing was going to benefit the fish and you know, the overall habitat. The fact that we got to talk with Jerry and found out, hey, you know, there's something else that we're missing here, at least Bob and I as laymen, about the whole process. So we were very fortunate and had a great partner here with College Township. So go ahead, Jerry.
As these gentlemen have indicated, my name is Jerry Northridge. I'm with College Township. I also work very closely with Harris Township, and we work around State College area. There are multiple MS4 permit holders that work together as a very joint group. So in 2017, our consultant NTM began to identify projects for our joint PRP, and this was identified as one of those possible win-win situations. Now, 2017, we identified the project. 2019, we're making our renewal applications. So this went in under the criteria for stream bank restoration. This DEP memo referenced in the slide, the expert panel report, 151 pages of exhilarating reading. So I'll try to cut it down to a couple bullet points here. Go ahead and tap the next slide, Adam. So prior to the construction, we went in and we actually photographed, documented the channel erosion. This is one of the smaller streams that the expert panel report identifies for a target. And while the entire project performed by Fish and Wildlife Services, I believe you said over 1,400 feet, 500 feet of this is township property. The rain garden that was previously shown, that small pool area, the outfalls that are upstream are riparian buffer area that was donated with the construction of development several years ago. And so that was the area that was targeted for MS4 credit. Next slide. As far as addressing the upslope area, on the College Township side of the stream, we can do that. We have more than enough space for riparian buffer and those types of things. It's the opposite side of the stream. We talked about 9 landowners earlier. So there's a couple in the College Township area where we'll actually need to approach them for their easements and then develop a longer term management plan beyond just this capital construction for that effort. So upslope areas on the College Township side, we do have riparian protections. I believe Clearwater Conservancy has gone in on the opposite side and worked with those neighbors to also plant riparian protections. I do not have in hand an easement that would give College Township long-term maintenance of that area. Both stream banks in this area are protected. Both stream banks have been corrected, and as it indicates here, 35 feet is the minimum required under that expert panel report. Next slide. As Adam mentioned, the privet, poison hemlock, honeysuckle, we'll develop some sort of operations and maintenance plan once we procure these easements to periodically spray and kind of set the ground rules for the township's role in long-term management. And then we'll be submitting these areas to DEP in probably the 2022 annual report. This project was submitted as part of the joint PRP to DEP. DEP has blessed that joint PRP, but the process of getting our MS4 permit renewals in the center region, they were not issued until effective July 1st, 2020. So while everybody was on the same page in 2017 and working together, by the time we reached 2020, construction had gotten well ahead of the permitting process with DEP on the MS4 side of things. So next slide.
Thank you, Jerry. I guess the last part of our presentation is kind of what we've learned along with Jerry about this whole process. And they really fall into 3 categories. One of them, and you just kind of heard it, think long term, Partners count in community relations is critical. The MS4 requirements, 5-year horizon. When you're doing this, you've got grant writing. It's a multi-year process. You're going to have failures, probably most of the time. At least half the time you don't get the funding that you wanted.
It's wonderful practice.
You know,
No, not wonderful, but it's practice.
you know, it's you're in competition with others that all have good projects. And the one of the keys is establishing credibility with the funders. And by way of example, the one that I mentioned, which is Sparrow Run, where the local foundation ponied up, they're ponying up 105,000, and they don't have the requirements of Growing Greener or reporting requirements of any, but they believed, based on our prior performance working together, that we could execute and would execute improvement to the environment, improvement to the stream. And that was purely reputation. It really wasn't what we said to them. We just asked them for money and they recognize it. So it does require, that's a critical part of it. And even after you get the funding, the execution takes time. It takes time to do the permit. You can run into invasive species problems. Both of the last two projects that we looked at were delayed. One by a bunch of a very heavy rain summer, and it washed out the ability of Fish and Boat to do it on time. They delayed for about 3 months, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, we had to delay a year, so that we actually lost a year on that project due to the weather. And we're now dealing with COVID delays on virtually every project. Okay. The second part is, I said that lessons learned, partners count. Well, you got partners, nonprofit, commercial, and public sector. And this is just a small sample of the number of partners that we work with. Other chapters of TU.
Private landowners. We do nothing without cooperation of private landowners. That's our greatest asset.
So and it's both local and federal government. And one of the partners that we've had is like National Fish and Wildlife. I've been to Washington twice to lobby on their behalf to help fund this kind of affair, and that goes a long way somewhere down the line, because it really is a partnership. Community relations, that kind of comes before, during, and after. And contact with the partners, funding sources, newspapers, etc.
Yeah, and this is part of what Bob's getting into is, so maybe we do build steps for somebody. Maybe we do move a load of topsoil. Maybe we do transplant a tree. It's part and parcel about what we do. And probably the most important thing that we do.
This is the before signs we put up in the area.
We knew we would get phone calls. We knew we would get lots of questions. So we tried to head that off at the pass.
Also, before, when we got the grant, we were able to get front page stories on the local newspapers. which talked about the benefits and so forth. During one of the things we did on this project, not only did we use website, but the social media. We took videos and films or photos of the project every day and put it on Facebook. And our followers increased until we had at least 100 followers every day on that project. And we also put up a during pardon our dust sign for the local people. And lots of people come out to watch.
And in particular, we addressed the dam, the kiddie pool, probably the most important section here as far as the locals were concerned.
And after we did community tours, we had DEP and Conservation District did some seminars or field trips that they participated. We had local and national politicians come to visit us, and the Conservation District specialists all came to visit us. In essence, community relations is a full-time effort. This isn't this project, but this is a sample. This is a kiosk that we put in, cost $10,000 at Fisherman's Paradise as part of a project there. And if it became a place where walkers go, and it communicates not only the fishing but and the canyon there, but it also talked about all the conservation efforts, and it was a true community relation. So the bottom line is that we're doing it for the fish and the kids. And we're prepared to take questions, I guess.
I think so.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. We do have one, I guess, comment and question in the chat. It says, I'm glad I said it on this presentation. We're just starting the field evaluation for a similar project in Cumberland County. We're partnering with PAFBC, our local chapter of Trout Unlimited, in the Conedoguinit Creek Watershed Association. Sorry, Shauna.
That's pretty good, Jason. Yeah, Conedoguinit.
Conedoguinit. Okay. So the question is, what permits did you get for the project? Just the Chapter 105 GP1 for fish habitat structures, MPDS permits? That's the question.
Yeah. So this was GP1, GP3. So the majority of what we did was fish habitat, but we did have some areas of rocktail and bank grading. So and we're fortunate here in Center County. We could keep everything within the county. Center County's got a very good crew that we've worked with before, with Jim Coslow over there in the lead. So it was very simple to keep it within the county for the project review. We had them out on site on both of these projects, just giving them a heads up. So we had a lot of stuff off at the pass by having these guys out here and showing them exactly what we wanted to do ahead of time.
I can't stress how important the relationship is with both sides of the Conservation District, the specialists and also the other guys. And in our case, we also do a lot of if you're Trout Unlimited and the water gets muddy, you get a call, and you need help from the Conservation District, and so you get a partnership. And we never do a project without asking them to come for a visit.
Yeah, and we were between two bridges, so we knew even if we told everybody, we're still going to get phone calls. And we had cars stopping on the bridge almost to the point where it was hazardous. So a couple days, Bob was up on the bridge talking to cars, and that was pretty important at the time. So I think that's, going back to community relations is a full-time effort. Those are some of the community relations that we were doing every day.
Sean, do you have more to the question, or do you want to add something?
I was just going to mention that we are engaged with the Cumberland County Conservation District with their watershed person, and have also been working with county planning as well. So I'd echo the importance of, multiple partners, multiple viewpoints, especially on things that are visible to the public. We're in a similar position where it's, from a road crossing to a railroad crossing, and it's a very visible location. So that's something we're taking into consideration as we're doing the preliminary evaluation there.
Okay, thanks, Sean. One more question. Was there a reason that the stream was not diverted when the heavy machinery was being used in stream? It seems that the heavy machinery would produce a lot of sediment, which is the impairment that is trying to be addressed.
Yeah, that's all true. Also, what's my budget? Do I have the money to divert it? And there's a certain amount of damage that goes with a diversion. If we are able to work from the bank, we'll work from the bank. The quickest way to do the stream restoration is have that equipment there. And we knew we were going to get calls from it, but we found the quickest and best way is to have that equipment in the water when we had to. Otherwise, we're working on the banks when we didn't have to. The other thing that gives you the ability, you can make all the measurements you want, but if you're actually there and you're working in the stream, you can read that stream, you can read your structures, and it overall makes for a much better project.
Yeah, it's really hard to divert a stream because where do you divert it to? And how, and do you do multiple diversions when it's 1,500 feet long?
And we would have easily doubled, probably tripled our budget to actually do something of this nature on this stream.
Okay. Well, that's the time that we have for today. I'm sure we can continue to put questions in the chat if you like. We can try to get those answered, and there'll be, I think, some additional resources on a website for you as well. So thank you again, gentlemen, Bob and Adam, for a great presentation, and Jerry for jumping in there a little bit. So now we can, hopefully you guys are getting the hang of this now. We can leave this session, I think, is the best thing to do. And then if you can go back to the agenda, and we're heading to the financing basics part 1. So we'll listen to, here we go. Rachel has the link for you there. So we'll close out of this one, go to that. We'll listen to that session for, that'll be about 15 minutes from Ellen. And then we'll jump in. You have your choice between the 3 sessions after that: stormwater fees, forming a stormwater utility in Camp Hill Borough, Cumberland County, or new Pinvest financing opportunities. So we can leave this session now and go and follow the link that Rachel has for you to the funding basics part 1. But thanks again.
All right. Hey, thanks a lot.
See you in the other one.